Later that day, the hobbits held a meeting of their own in Bilbo's room. Merry and Pippin were indignant when they heard that Sam had crept into the council and had been chosen as Frodo's companion. "It's most unfair," said Pippin. "Instead of throwing him out and clapping him in chains, Elrond goes and rewards him for his cheek." "Rewards?" said Frodo. "I can't imagine a more severe punishment." Sheila just knocked the computer over.
Sorry. Okay.
"Rewards?" said Frodo. "I can't imagine a more severe punishment. You are not thinking what you are saying. Condemned to go on this hopeless journey? A reward? Yesterday I dreamed that my task was done and I could rest here a long while, perhaps for good." "Well, I don't wonder," said Merry, "and I wish you could. But we are envying Sam, not you. If you have to go, then it would be a punishment for any of us to be left behind, even in Rivendell. We have come a long way with you and been through some stiff times. We want to go on." "That's what I meant," said Pippin. "We hobbits ought to stick together. I shall go, unless they chain me up. There must be someone with intelligence in the party." "Then you certainly will not be chosen Peregrine Took," said Gandalf, looking in through the window, which was near to the ground. "But you are all worrying yourselves unnecessarily. Nothing is decided yet." "Nothing decided?" cried Pippin. "Then what were you all doing? You were shut up in there for hours." "Talking," said Bilbo. "There was a deal of talk, and everyone had an eye-opener, even old Gandalf. I think Legolas's bit of news about Gollum caught even him off the hop, though he passed it off." "You were wrong," said Gandalf. "You were inattentive. I had already heard of it from Gwahir. If you want to know, the only real eye-openers, as you put it, were you and Frodo, and I was the only one that was not surprised." "Well, anyway," said Bilbo, "nothing was decided beyond choosing poor Frodo and Sam. I was afraid all the time that it might come to that if I was let off. But if you ask me, Elrond will send out a fair number when the reports come in. Have they started yet, Gandalf?" "Yes," said the wizard. "Some of the scouts have been sent out already. More will go tomorrow. Elrond is sending elves, and they will get in touch with the rangers and maybe with Thranduil's folk in Mirkwood. And Aragorn has gone out with Elrond's sons. We shall have to scour the lands all round for many long leagues before any move is made. So cheer up, Frodo. You will probably make quite a long stay here." "Ah," said Sam gloomily, "we'll just wait long enough for winter to come." "Well, that can't be helped," said Bilbo. "It's your fault, partly. Frodo, my lad, insisting on waiting for my birthday. A funny way of honoring it, I can't help thinking. Not the day I should have chosen for letting the Saxville Bagginses into Bag End. But there it is. You can't wait now till spring. You can't wait until the reports come back. When winter first begins to bite, the stones crack in the frosty night. When pools are black and trees are bare, 'tis evil in the wild to fare. But that, I am afraid, will be just your luck." "I am afraid that it will," said Gandalf. "We cannot start until we have found out about the riders." "I thought they were destroyed in the flood," said Merry. "You cannot destroy ring-wraiths like that," said Gandalf. "The power of their master is in them. They stand or fall by him. We hope that they were all unhorsed and unmasked, and so made for a while less dangerous. But we must find out for certain. In the meantime, you should try to forget your troubles, Frodo. I do not know if I can do anything to help you, but I will whisper this in your ears. Someone said that intelligence would be needed in your party, and he was right. I think I shall come with you." So great was Frodo's delight at this announcement that Gandalf left the window-sill where he had been sitting, took off his hat, and bowed. "I only said I think I shall come. Do not count on anything yet. In this matter, Elrond will have much to say, and your friend Strider, which reminds me, I want to see Elrond. I must be off." "How long do you think I shall have here?" said Frodo to Bilbo once Gandalf had gone. "Oh, I don't know. I can't count days in Rivendell," said Bilbo, "but quite long, I should think. We can have many a good talk. What about helping me write my book and making a start on the next? Have you thought of an ending?" "Yes, of several, but they are all dark and unpleasant," said Frodo. "Oh, that won't do," said Bilbo. "Books ought to have good endings. How would this do? They all settled down and lived together happily ever after." "Oh, it will do, if it ever comes to that," said Frodo. "Ah," said Sam, "and where will they live? That's what I often wonder." For a while the hobbits continued to talk and think of the past journey and of the perils that lay ahead. But such was the virtue of the land of Rivendell that soon all fear and anxiety was lifted from their minds. The future, good or ill, was not forgotten, but it ceased to have a power over the present. Health and hope grew strong in them, and they were content with each good day as it came, taking pleasure in every meal and in every word and every song. And so the days slipped away as each morning dawned bright and fair, and each evening followed cool and clear. But autumn was waning fast. Slowly the golden light faded to a pale silver, and the lingering leaves fell from naked trees. The wind began to blow chill from the misty mountains to the east, and the hunter's moon waxed round in the night sky and put to flight all the lesser stars. But lo, in the south, one star shone red. Every night, as the moon waned, again it showed brighter and brighter. Frodo could see it from his window, deep in the heavens, burning like a watchful eye glaring above the trees at the brink of the valley. The hobbits had been nearly 2 months in the house of Elrond, and November had gone by with the last shred of autumn, and December was passing when the scouts began to return. Some had gone north beyond the springs of the Horwell into the Enten Moor. Others had gone west with the help of Aragorn and the Rangers to search the lands far down the Grey Flood as far as Tharbad, where the old North Road crossed the river by a ruined town. Many had gone east and south, and some of these had crossed the mountains and entered Mirkwood, while others had climbed the pass to the source of the Gladden River and come down into Wilderland and across the Gladden Fields, and so at length reached the home of Radagast at Rosegobble. Radagast was not there, and they had returned over that high pass that was called the Red Horn Gate. The sons of Elrond, Eladan and Elrohir, were the last to return. They had made a great journey, passing down the Silver Lode into a strange country, but of their errand they would not speak to anyone save Elrond. In no region had the messengers discovered any signs or tidings of the riders or any other servants of the enemy. Even from the eagles of the misty mountains they learned no fresh news. Nothing had been seen or heard of Gollum, but the wild wolves were still gathering and hunting again far up the great river. 3 of the black horses had been found at once, drowned in the flooded ford. Upon the rocks of the rapids below it, searchers discovered the bodies of 5 more, and also a long black cloak slashed and tattered. But of the black riders, no other trace was to be seen, and nowhere was their presence to be felt. It seemed that they had vanished from the north. "8 out of the 9 are accounted for at least," said Gandalf. "It is rash to be too sure, yet I think we may hope now that the ring wraiths were scattered, and have been obliged to return as best they could to their master in Mordor, empty and shapeless. If that is so, it will be some time before they can begin the hunt again. Of course, the enemy has other servants, but they will have to journey all the way to the border of Rivendell before they can pick up our trail. And if we are careful, that will be hard to find. But we must delay no longer. Elrond summoned the hobbits to him. He looked gravely at Frodo. The time has come, he said. If the ring is to set out, it must go soon. But those who go with it must not count on their errand being aided by war or by force. They must pass into the domain of the enemy, far from aid. Do you still hold to your word, Frodo, that you will be the ring bearer? I do, said Frodo. I will go with Sam. Then I cannot help you much, not even with counsel, said Elrond. I can foresee very little of your road, and how your task is to be achieved, I do not know. The shadow has crept now to the feet of the mountains, and draws nigh even to the border of the grey flood, and under that shadow all is dark to me. You will meet many foes, some opened, some disguised, and you may find friends upon your way where you least look for it. I will send out messages, such as I can contrive, to those that I know in the wide world, but so perilous are the lands now become, that some may well miscarry, or come no quicker than you yourself. And I will choose you companions to go with you, as far as they will or fortune allows. The number must be few, since your hope is in speed and secrecy. Had I a host of elves in armor from the elder days, it would avail little except to arouse the power of Mordor. The company of the ring shall be 9, and the 9 walkers shall be set against the 9 riders that are evil. With you and your faithful servant Gandalf will go, for this shall be his great task, and maybe the end of his labors. For the rest, they shall represent the other free peoples of the world, elves, dwarves, and men. Legolas shall be for the elves, Gimli son of Gloin for the dwarves. They are willing to go at least to the passes of the mountains, and maybe beyond. For men, you shall have Aragorn, son of Arathorn, for the ring of Isildur concerns him closely. Strider, cried Frodo. Yes, he said with a smile. I ask leave, once again, to be your companion, Frodo. I would have begged you to come, said Frodo. Only I thought you were going to Minas Tirith with Boromir. I am, said Aragorn, and the sword that was broken shall be reforged before I set out to war. But your road and our road lie together for many hundreds of miles. Therefore Boromir will also be in our company. He is a valiant man. There remain 2 more to be found, said Elrond. These I will consider. Of my household I may find some that it seems good to me to send. But that'll leave no place for us, cried Pippin in dismay. We don't want to be left behind. We want to go with Frodo. That is because you cannot conceive and do not understand or imagine what lies ahead, said Elrond. Neither does Frodo, said Gandalf, unexpectedly supporting Pippin. Nor do any of us see clearly. It is true that if these hobbits understood the danger, they would not dare to go, but they would still wish to go, or wish that they dared, and be shamed and unhappy. I think, Elrond, that in this matter it would be well to trust rather to their friendship than to great wisdom. Even if you choose for us elf lords such as Glorfindel, he could not storm the Dark Tower, nor open the road by the fire of the power that is in him. You speak gravely, said Elrond, but I am in doubt. The Shire I forebode is not free now from peril, and these two I had thought to send back as messengers to do what they could, according to the fashion of their country, to warn the people of their danger. In any case, I judge that the younger of these two, Peregrine Took, should remain. My heart is against his going. Then, Master Elrond, you shall have to lock me in prison, or send me home tied up in a sack, said Pippin, for otherwise I shall follow the company. Let it be so, then. You shall go, said Elrond, and he sighed. Now the tale of 9 is filled. In 7 days the company must depart. The sword of Elendil was forged anew by elvish smiths, and upon its blade was traced a device of 7 stars set between the crescent moon and the rayed sun, and about them was written many runes. For Aragorn, son of Arathorn, was going to war upon the marches of Mordor. Very bright was that sword when it was made whole again. The light of the sun shone red in it, and the light of the moon shone cold, and its edge was hard and keen. And Aragorn gave it a new name, and called it Anduril, the flame of the west. Aragorn and Gandalf walked together, and sat speaking on their road about the perils that they would meet. Speaking of their road and the perils they would meet. And they pondered the storied and figured maps and books of lore that were there in the house of Elrond. Sometimes Frodo was with them, but he was content to lean upon their guidance, and he spent as much time as he could with Bilbo. In those last days, the hobbits sat together in the evening in the Hall of Fire, and there were many tales that they heard told in full, the lay of Beren and Luthien, and the winning of the great jewel. But in the day, while Merry and Pippin were out and about, Frodo and Sam were to be found with Bilbo in his own small room. Then Bilbo would read passages from his book, which still seemed very incomplete, or scraps from his verses, or would take notes about Frodo's adventures. On the morning of the last day, Frodo was alone with Bilbo, and the old hobbit pulled out from under his bed a wooden box, and he lifted the lid, and he fumbled inside. "Here is your sword," he said, "but it was broken, you know. I took it to keep it safe, but I've forgotten to ask the smiths if they could mend it. No time now, so I thought perhaps you would care to have this, don't you know?" And he took from the box a small sword in an old, shabby leather scabbard. He drew it, and its polished, well-tended blade glittered suddenly, cold and bright. "This is Sting," he said, and he thrust it with very little effort, quite deeply, into a wooden beam. "Take it, if you like. I shan't want it again, I expect." Frodo accepted it gratefully. "Also, there's this," said Bilbo, bringing out a parcel which seemed to be rather heavy for its size. He unwound several folds of cloth and held up a small shirt of mail. It was closely woven out of many rings, and as supple almost as linen, and cold as ice, and harder than steel. It shone like moonlit silver, and was studded with white gems. With it was a belt of pearl and crystal. "It's a pretty thing, isn't it?" said Bilbo, moving it in the light. "And useful. It is my dwarf mail that Thorin gave me. I got it back from Michael Delving before I started, and I packed it in with my luggage. I brought all the memories of my journey away with me, except the ring. But I did not expect to use this, and I don't need it now, except to look at sometimes. You hardly feel any weight when you put it on." Well, I don't think I should look right in it," said Frodo. "Just what I said myself," said Bilbo. But never mind about looks. You can wear it under your outer clothes. Come on. You must share this secret with me. Don't tell anybody else. But I should feel happier if I knew you were wearing it. I have a fancy that it will turn even the knives of the Black Riders, he said in a low voice. Very well, I will take it, said Frodo. Bilbo put it on him and fastened Sting upon the glittering belt, and then pulled on his Frodo put over the top his old weather-stained breeches, tunic, and jacket. Just a plain hobbit you look, said Bilbo, but there is more about you now than appears on the surface. Good luck to you. He turned away and looked out the window and tried to hum a tune. I cannot thank you as I should, Bilbo, for this and for all of your past kindnesses, said Frodo. Don't try, said the old hobbit, turning round and slapping him on the back. Ow! He cried. You're too hard now to slap. But there you are. Hobbits must stick together, and especially Bagginses. All I ask in return is, take as much care of yourself as you can, and bring back all the news you can, and any old songs or tales that you come upon. I will do my best to finish the book before you return. I should like to write the second book if I'm spared. He broke off, and he turned to the window again to sing softly. I sit beside the fire and think of all that I have seen, of meadow flowers and butterflies and summers that have been, of yellow leaves and gossamer and autumns that there were, with morning mist and silver sun and wind upon my hair. I sit beside the fire and think of how the world will be when winter comes without a spring that I shall ever see. For still there are so many things I have never seen. In every wood and every spring there is a different green. I sit beside the fire and I think of people long ago, of people who will see a world that I shall never know. But all the while I sit and think of times that were before. I listen for returning feet and voices at the door. It was a cold, gray day near the end of December. The east wind was streaming through the bare branches on the trees and seething through the dark pines high in the hills. Ragged clouds were hurrying overhead, dark and low. As the cheerless shadows of the early evening began to fall, the company made ready to set out. They were to start at dusk, for Elrond counseled them to journey under cover of night as often as they could, until they were far from Rivendell. You should fear the many eyes and servants of Sauron, he said. I do not doubt that news of the discomfiture of his riders has already reached him, and he will be filled with wrath. Soon now his spies on foot and wing will be abroad in these northern lands. Even of the sky above you must be aware as you go on your way. The company took little gear for war, for their hope was in secrecy, not in battle. Aragorn had Anduril, but no other weapon, and he went forth clad only in his rusty green and brown, like a ranger of the wilderness. Boromir had a long sword, in fashion like Anduril, but of less lineage. He also bore a shield and his war horn. Loud and clear it sounds in the valley of the hills, he said, and then let all the foes of Gondor flee. Putting it to his lips, he blew a blast, and the echoes leapt from rock to rock, and all that heard that voice in Rivendell sprang to their feet. Slow should you be to wind that horn again, Boromir, said Elrond, until you stand once more upon the borders of your own land, and dire need is upon you. Maybe, said Boromir, but always I have let my horn cry at setting forth. And though thereafter we may walk in shadows, I will not go forth like a thief in the night. Gimli the dwarf alone openly wore a short skirt of steel rings, for dwarves make light of burdens, and in his belt was a broad-bladed axe. Legolas had a bow and a quiver, and at his belt a long white knife. The younger hobbits wore the swords which they had taken from the barrow, but Frodo took only Sting and his mail coat, as Bilbo wished, remaining hidden. Gandalf bore his staff, but girt at his side was the elven sword Glamdring, the mate of Orcrist, which now lay upon the breast of Thorin under the lonely mountain. All were well furnished by Elrond with thick warm clothes, and they all had jackets and cloaks which were lined with fur, and spare food and clothes and blankets, and other needs were laden onto a pony, none other than the poor beast that had brought them from Bree. The stay in Rivendell had worked a great wonder of change upon him. He was now glossy and seemed to have the vigor of youth. It was Sam who had insisted on choosing him, declaring that Bill, as he now called him, would pine away if he didn't come. The animal could nearly talk, he said, and would talk if he stayed here much longer. He gave me a look as plain as Mr. Pippin could speak, and if you don't let me go with you, Sam, I'll follow on my own. And so Bill was going as the beast of burden. Yet it was the only member of the company that did not seem depressed. Their farewells had been said in the great hall by the fire, and they were only now waiting for Gandalf, who had not come out again from the house. A gleam of firelight came from the open doors, and soft lights were glowing in many windows, and Bilbo huddled in a cloak and stood silent on the doorstep beside Frodo. Aragorn sat with his head bowed to his knees. Only Elrond knew fully what this hour meant for him. The others could be seen as gray shapes in the darkness. Sam was standing by the pony, sucking on his teeth and staring moodily into the gloom where the river roared stonily below. His desire for adventure was at its lowest ebb. "Bill, my lad," he said, "you oughtn't to have took up with us. You could have stayed here and ate the best hay till the new grass comes." Bill just swished his tail and said nothing. Sam eased the pack onto his shoulders and went over anxiously in his mind all the things that he had stowed in it, wondering if he had forgotten anything. His chief treasure was his cooking gear, and the little box of salt that he always carried and refilled when he could. A good supply of pipeweed, but not near enough, I'll warrant. Flint and tinder, woolen hose, linen, various small belongings of his master's that Frodo had forgotten, but Sam stowed them to bring them out in triumph once they were called for, and he went through them all. "Rope!" he muttered. "No rope! And only last night you said to yourself, Sam, what about a bit of rope? You'll want it if you haven't got it. Well, I'll want it. I can't get any now." At that moment, Elrond came out with Gandalf, and he called the company to him. "This is my last word," he said in a low voice. "The ring bearer is setting out upon the quest of Mount Doom. Upon him alone is any charge laid, neither to cast away the ring, nor to deliver it to any servant of the enemy, nor indeed to let anyone handle it, save members of the company and the council, and only then in gravest need. The others go with him as free companions, to help him upon his way. You may tarry, or come back, or turn aside to other paths as chance allows. The further you go, the less easy it will be to withdraw. Yet no oath or bond is laid upon you to go further than you will, for you do not know the strength of your hearts, and you cannot foresee what each might meet upon the road." "Faithless is he that says farewell when the road darkens," said Gimli. "Maybe," said Elrond, "but let him not vow to walk in the dark, who has not yet seen the night fall." "Yes, sworn word Might strengthen a quaking heart, said Gimli. Or break it, said Elrond. Look not too far ahead, but go now with good hearts. Farewell, and may the blessings of elves and men and all free folk go with you. May the stars shine upon your faces. Good good luck, cried Bilbo, stuttering with a cold. I don't suppose you'll be able to keep a diary, Frodo, my lad, but I shall expect a full account when you get back. And don't be too long. Farewell. Many others of Elrond's household stood in the shadows and watched them go, bidding them farewell with soft voices. There was no laughter, no song, no music. At last they turned away and faded silently into the dusk. They crossed the bridge, and they wound slowly up the long, steep path that led out of the cloven vale of Rivendell, and they came at length to the high moor, where wind hissed through the heather. Then, with one glance at the last homely house twinkling below them, they strode away into the night. And that is all we're going to read tonight.
That's good because I'm really tired.
Yep.
What time is it?
It is 9:30,
Yeah.
and time for you guys to get yourselves ready for bed.